Now on to our next speaker. I'm going to introduce Dr. Mostafa Jafarian from Warringtonfire in the UK. If you want to turn on your video, Mostafa. There you are. Mostafa, I'll hand over to you. Your presentation towards liberty in design and fire safety assurance in practice. It's an interesting topic and I'm looking forward to hear from it.
Thank you very much, Ed. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. And I have to say, it was a very interesting presentation by Abhishek. And I would try to follow the same pace. At the start, allow me to thank all of you guys who attended the call and today's presentation. And I want to thank the organizer for giving me the chance to be here. As has been mentioned, I'm going to talk about towards liberty in design and fire safety assurance in practice, which that includes to have a look at the subjects, including the new types of materials and constructions, the issues that we have around fire safety issues with regard to those products, and just concluding the talk by talking about how can we deal with those issues or those concerns. Well, let's just start with just talking briefly about the construction side, because as we all know, regardless of the complexity of the construction and the project that we are dealing with, there are key objectives which they are literally the same for almost all of the project that we have. The main thing is whatever plan that we have in place, it should be achievable. And that should be followed up by making sure that the plan and the design that we have, it is actually going to sit well with surrounding construction. It would have an appealing appearance at the end of the project. And the design should also be cost effective and within the budget, making sure that whatever design we are going to put in place, they are going to meet the requirements, the functional and operational requirements, as well as making sure that they are sustainable in design. But the overarching matter that which within any project and any subject you have to be mindful of it is the safety. Specifically in this case, we are going to talk about fire safety. The parameters which will affect those objectives from the construction, it would be defined by when we are choosing our materials for the construction. And when we define those materials, then that could be modified and affect the method of construction we are going to use. As it's been mentioned, Abhishek mentioned it, we currently have a specific tested standards, which they are very prescriptive. But when it comes to the guidelines and the fire safety codes, the authorities, just to help us in terms of choosing different types of materials, they've been giving us the principles of the fire safety codes and the requirements that we need. So we would get away from the fact that of designing all of the time a series of boxes and not having anything new in front of us. As such, these days, our designers, they have a range of products in front of them, and because of having those range of products and innovation with them, they can come up with a new type of design and materials that includes having the chance of using products which are made of recycled products. We are seeing the new type of technologies for the timber structures, which leads to having more and more high-rise timber construction around the world. We are having new method of constructions, which includes modular construction and many more. And among those ones, today I want to briefly going to talk about modular constructions and see what they are and how they are related in terms of the fire safety aspect. Well, just before we get into too much with regard to the fire safety, I think it would make sense if we define modular construction. Well, modular construction refers to type of systems which are manufactured off-site of the construction site. And when that end product is finished, they are going to be transferred on site and they are going to be installed on a specific type of foundation, which they are pretty much they are already in place, or they are going to be used as a part of a hybrid systems. In terms of the modular construction, we can categorize them in three different categories. Either they would come as a volumetric module products, which it is the top picture, which it is very, very much the end use product, which is basically all of the parts of the system has already been made in a manufacturing site. Or they could come as like a panelized system, which is the middle picture, which the panels would be transferred on site and then they would get installed in place, or they would be a part of the components of the modules or the equipments that they want, and they would transfer those ones in. These type of products and these type of the construction methods, they can be used for literally any type of conventional, any type of the buildings that we can build with conventional constructions, including residential buildings, high-rise construction. And an example of it, you can see it here. That's a building of 130-meter tall building in Croydon was built using modular construction on a hybrid system. But the question would be why these modular constructions became more and more popular these days. One, as I said, it is because those products are made and manufactured off-site in a manufacturing site, which allows them to have high level of control over the product and the end-use product. That means that they are going to reduce the volume of the waste that they are going to have throughout this construction process. And because the product which is going to get on site, it is actually ready, that would dramatically reduce the construction time. And having the reduction in the waste, reducing the construction time, this would make this solution very sustainable and very appealing for the developers. And when it comes to in terms of the overall cost for the labor, again, because of the lower time that they have in construction and because the product is ready, that would be reduced as well. And they can be used in the form of hybrid as well as being used on their own. For instance, if it is for high-rise construction, they can go as a hybrid format. And if they are going to be just temporary buildings, again, those they can be used on their own. But as it's been mentioned, for these type of products, they are quite new, they are a little bit different to traditional type of construction that we have. What that means that we currently don't have a specific code specifically for modular constructions and that could address all the concerns and getting away from the traditional construction. And that means that we want to address a couple of challenges when we are dealing with the modular construction. That includes the fact that we have to answer whether the structural performance on the fire condition can be controlled, or can we check it, which the answer would for that one would be yes. In terms of, we would ask the questions about what are the products that we are using as a part of these construction to make sure about the risk profile that we are dealing with, how the fire actually is going to spread in these type of construction, and how we are going to deal with ongoing maintenance of these structures. Well, to make sure about the safety of the constructions, and because we might not have the actual very specific codes related to modular constructions in place, then that means that we have to always go back to the first principles and start asking ourselves very basic questions and build our knowledge on that basis, which that includes, can the material that we are going to use as a part of these constructions be easily ignited? Do we have the heat release rate of the products? Can we predict how quick the fire is going to spread on the surface? How the smoke can propagate throughout these constructions, because there would be cavity between the systems when we are constructing them? How the flame can actually spread between those elements of constructions? The other bit is that do we need to protect the structural elements? If we are do we need any separate type of fire protection for structural elements? What would be the load carrying mechanism in the system? Can any part of those modules get melted and created droplets? Which at that point, it means that the fire, in addition to a normal spread, it can have a downward spread as well, which is a high level of risk. To answer all these questions, we would, again, as I said, we are going to go back to the very basics. And this is the curve about how the fire is going to develop inside the compartment. And we have to understand, when we're asking those questions, which part of this curve we are going to talk about. Is it before that flashover, which is that 0.7 on the curve, and in the middle of the curve? Which, if the answer is yes, we want to deal with the idea of answering the questions before the flashover. That means that we have conduct and ask the manufacturers or ask for reaction to fire test evidence for those parts of the question that we ask. And if it is beyond 0.7, beyond flashover, then that means that we are going to ask to see the fire test evidence on the fire resistance side. But as it's been mentioned, we already have conventional and prescriptive test methods in place for a specific type of products that might not 100% and readily be available for the modular construction and the scenario that we are dealing with in actual life and actual project. What that means that for any of these projects, these type of projects, we may need to be very risk-based. We may take a risk-based approach when we are dealing with those type of construction. That means that we would have a risk-based analysis approach, evaluate the construction, evaluate the risks that we are going to deal with. And when we know all of those parameters and basically spotting what are the points that that could potentially lead to a risk or further, it would need a further consideration, then we would go back to the fire test evidence that we've already requested. And we are going to go through those fire test evidence. If those conventional fire test evidence could help us to address all those questions, then we are in a very good shape. But mainly for this type of constructions, not always all those fire test evidence may address all the questions. That means that for a specific type of questions, which are very much project-based, we can go through conducting a series of ad hoc testing, which creates, which they are not exactly as they would be done in a normal situation, but it would basically reflect what we are going to have on site. And when we are going to combine those fire test evidence with those ad hoc fire test evidence with the conventional fire test evidence that we've already have them in place, then combining all of them, then potentially we would be in a good shape of saying that, well, now we address all those concerns and making sure about a specific site condition situation that we had. The other part of the work that we are dealing for the constructions, in addition to making sure that we are all good and we are all answered, basically we answered all the questions around the construction side at the design stage. The next stage for us, the same as any conventional type of construction, is the execution part. Although the quality of the modular constructions is very high and they can have a certification for their product, mostly that most of the manufacturers, they will have it. But when they are getting transferred on site, we have to make sure about the fact that what is going to be installed on site, it is actually is suitable, and it actually could be installed in a way that it performs as is intended. And beyond that, we have to avoid any poor workmanship in place. Then we have to make sure that we are using site inspector to go on site and making sure that that what is being installed, it is actually according to the plan and has been agreed according to the manufacturer advice. This site using certified product, using certified installers and doing the site inspection. I think this is something which is going on at the moment and it's been advocated by literally most of these codes that we have. And this is a brief quotation from approved document B, which basically requests the end user, that's the product that they are going to be installed on site or is going to be purchased for the end use, to be certified and then use the accredited installers and follow that one to be followed up by the site inspection. So how can we deal with this matter? If I just want to summarize my talk now, is that having new types of products in place is always a good chance, and we have to see it as an opportunity. But having something new should also come with a little bit of vigilance in place of making sure that we are considering all aspects of it, from making sure that the product that we are buying is actually certificated. So you would make sure about the quality of the product. And when we want to use it on actual site and for our project, then we need to make sure that we have sufficient fire test evidence with us. And if there is some bits which are mostly relevant to the product that we are buying, and because they are very new and they may not sit within the current type of fire test evidence that we have, or within this, it is not within the scope of the test standard that we currently have, then there is always the chance of conducting a series of ad hoc tests to add more information and compile more information together to make sure about the fire safety of the product that we are going to have in place. And finally, just giving all those evidence to our consultants, so to make sure that they are actually having all the picture in front of them laid out, and saying that making an informed decision about how we can deal with these fire safety aspects, different fire safety aspects that we have in place. And to close this circle, then we need to ask ourselves that, okay, we already done everything on the design stage. Let's go back and make sure that we understand who is the certified installer who is going to bring those products on site. And at the design execution stage, we would use certified installers and then follow that one up with a site inspection to ensure that the end use product is going to do what is intended and it is actually fit for purpose. And with this, I'm just going to conclude my presentation and hand over back to Ed. Thank you very much.